They were supposed to come home as heroes. They had just reached the European Cup semi-finals. Manchester United had the youngest, most exciting team in England. The future belonged to them. Then, on February 6, 1958, their plane stopped in Munich, and everything changed. This was the team known as the Busby Babes. Matt Busby had built them differently. While other clubs relied on experienced stars, he trusted young players. Fearless players. Players who were growing together. And it was working. Manchester United had won back-to-back English League titles. They were taking on Europe, and some believed this young team could dominate football for years. One of them was Duncan Edwards. At just 21, he was already considered one of the most complete players in England. Around him were stars like Tommy Taylor, Roger Byrne, Liam Whalen, and Eddie Coleman. They were not supposed to disappear. But after a European Cup match against Red Star Belgrade, Manchester United began their journey home. The plane stopped in Munich to refuel. Snow was falling. The first attempt to take off failed. Then the second. The passengers waited. Nobody knew they were waiting for one of the darkest moments in football history. Then came the third attempt. The engines roared. The aircraft raced down the runway, but it never got into the air. The plane crashed. In minutes, the future of Manchester United had been destroyed. 23 people died. 8 Manchester United players were killed. Roger Byrne, Eddie Coleman, Mark Jones, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, Jeff Bent, Liam Whalen, and Duncan Edwards. Edwards initially survived the crash. For 15 days, he fought for his life. Then, on February 21st, he died. He was 21 years old. Think about what Manchester United lost. This was not an aging team reaching the end of its journey. This was a beginning, a generation that had barely started writing its story. And suddenly, the story was over. Or at least, he should have been. Because Manchester United now faced an impossible question. How do you rebuild when almost everything you built is gone? Matt Busby himself was seriously injured. For a time, it was uncertain whether he would survive. The manager was fighting for his life. The players were dead. The club was broken. But Manchester United still had matches to play. Less than 2 weeks after the crash, they returned to the pitch. Imagine walking into that dressing room. Empty spaces, empty voices, empty shirts that once belonged to players who would never return. But the club continued. And slowly, something remarkable began to happen. The survivors became the bridge between the past and the future. One of them was Bobby Charlton. He survived Munich. But for the rest of his career, he carried the memory of the teammates who did not. Manchester United began rebuilding. Not quickly, not perfectly, and not by replacing the Busby Babes. Because you cannot replace a generation. Instead, a new team slowly emerged. Then came George Best. Then Dennis Law. And alongside them stood Bobby Charlton, one of the survivors of Munich. Matt Busby returned too. 10 years after the crash, Manchester United found themselves back where the Busby Babes had always dreamed of going. The European Cup final. It was May 29, 1968. Their opponents were Benfica, and for 90 minutes, history seemed to follow every pass. Bobby Charlton scored. Benfica equalized. The final went into extra time. Then Manchester United attacked. George Best scored. Brian Kidd scored. Charlton scored again. Manchester United won 4-1. They were champions of Europe, the first English club to win the European Cup. And suddenly, a dream that had been destroyed on a runway in Munich had finally reached its destination. But the trophy did not erase what happened. It could never bring back Duncan Edwards, or Roger Byrne, or the other players who never came home. That is not what made the victory powerful. What made it powerful was the journey. A great young team had been destroyed. A manager nearly died. A football club lost its future. And somehow, 10 years later, the survivors and a new generation completed the dream. That is why the Munich air disaster is more than a Manchester United story. It is a story about how quickly everything can disappear, and about what happens when you refuse to let the story end there. On February 6, 1958, Manchester United's greatest team never came home. 10 years later, their dream did.